Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander.
So today on the show, I'm very excited to welcome Erik J. Olson, a fellow Virginian, which I don't often get to say, from the Commonwealth. It's not a state, it's a Commonwealth, whatever that means. So anyway, Erik is a seasoned entrepreneur with over 30 years of professional experience and is the CEO of Proxa. Hopefully I said that right.
Yep.
Excellent. The Proxa portfolio includes 3 digital agencies and the Business of Agency Mastermind. He's also the author of $1 Million Journey, How to Launch a 7-Figure Business, and he's gunning for a $100 million sale to private equity. I love that you put that, by the way, at the end of the bio, because I'll get on, sales calls with agency owners. I'm like, really, what are you building? And it's a lot of wishy-washy stuff or whatever. Sometimes, not always, but you put it in the bio, which is great. Yeah. So to get into things, Erik, would you mind talking a little bit about your background and how you got to making the insane decision of running multiple agencies at once?
Yeah, you got it. Well, first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I appreciate it, Dan. Yeah. So I didn't start off with a master plan on how I was going to get from, high school or whatever to here. And if anyone thinks that I planned this out, you are giving me way too much credit. This was a very meandering kind of journey. I went to school, college for engineering. I was a civil engineer for 6 years. I do have 30 years of experience, which means that I'm pretty old. I'm 52 years old. So this goes back to pre-internet days. And when the internet was coming out, I had friends that were working at places like AOL doing this thing called HTML, and they were making a bunch of money. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Let me learn how to code. Taught myself to code by going to Barnes & Noble, because again, the internet wasn't really a big thing. So I'd go to Barnes & Noble several times a week, buy books, read books there for free, put them back on the shelf. I just needed to solve problems. And I loved coding because it was nonstop problem solving. Well, at some point, I turned that focus from solving my clients' problems to problems that I was having in my business as a custom software development agency. And the big problem that I had was, I didn't know when work was going to come or not. Sometimes we would get these big projects, we'd make a bunch of money. Other times, nothing, right? It was just like feast or famine. And I got tired of chasing the money. And so I wanted something more stable. So back in 2016 or so, I started to dabble into this add-on service called social media, and maybe a little bit of marketing websites. And now I was the guy that coded the back end stuff. We can make it do anything, but it looked like garbage. So I needed some help. I had to solve a problem. I needed someone that could design very nice looking front ends for the awesome back ends that we were designing. And I tried different contractors, and with moderate success, maybe less than moderate success, until I bumped into this guy named Kevin Daisy, who is, to the end of the story, he's now my co-founder. He had also dabbled in digital marketing, but mostly did CMS style websites. So I think WordPress, Joomla, whatever else was around at the time back in 2016. We started working on a couple projects together. One thing led to another. We merged our companies and formed Array Digital. That's the first agency. We also hired a digital marketing manager so that we could continue to work with these clients after we delivered whatever it is that we built for them. And then I had another problem. Actually, the same problem as before. Where's that next client going to come from? And I started to look at our finances and look at our contracts, and I realized that most of the company, starting in 2018, I was projecting 2018 at the time. Most of our company, if nothing changed, would lose money. I'd have to go out and sell $1 million worth of software development and website hosting and building websites in order just to break even from the previous year. But there was this little sliver of hope in the books called digital marketing. Didn't make a lot of cash, but it made good profit margins. We had one guy doing it, and we had these recurring contracts. And I'm like, I don't really understand this, but I want more of it. Right? And so slowly over the course, well, at first slowly, and then quickly, I did a deep dive to figure out what the hell is digital marketing? Why do these customers keep paying us to do this thing this guy's doing? And I really had to answer the question, does it add value? And what I realized was, oh yeah, it adds value. As a matter of fact, the marketing is more valuable to our clients than the thing that we built for them that they want to market. If they don't do marketing, I saw over and over and over and over again with their projects and also with my own SaaS projects that I attempted over the years. If I didn't market them, then the people would not come, and I didn't have a business. So it took about a year. We converted the entire company over to digital marketing, and the rest is history. We've been a digital marketing agency ever since.
Right. So we're looking, so this is back in 2016, 2017 at this point?
Correct.
And since then can you talk a little bit about getting into these other agencies and kind of like how that came about?
Yeah. So we were not niched like most agencies in the world. We were just generalists. We would work for anybody that had money and a pulse. Right? And we knew from talking to people that, and other business owners that were ahead of us on this continuum of learning, that the riches are in the niches, that we should niche. So we knew that, but we didn't know how to niche. I also did another deep dive looking at our clients, and for whatever reason, which ones do we work the best with? And I'm going to give you 3 industries. This will probably not surprise anybody that hears this. The 3 industries that we did the best with for whatever reason: doctors, lawyers, home services companies.
And when you say best, what does best mean?
They paid their bills. They didn't cancel for crazy reasons. They liked working with us, and we liked working for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't trying to do at that point an incredibly data intensive analysis to figure out what the factors were. I just wanted to find out which industries were best for us. Again, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Maybe them, maybe it was us, maybe it was a combination of the both.
It's funny because we've made the mistake of doing the data intensive thing, and I think our clients have. And one concept we introduced was like a client hall of fame. So it's not that data intensive, but you just say, hey, over the years, who are the clients that put a smile on your face, basically? And
yeah,
there should be some measure, like they probably have retained for a certain amount of time, but that can tell you a lot more than which industry is going up in the market. What's hot? Like, you're not day trading, right? You don't have liquid cash just to move in and out of things. Like, you're building systems and teams. So I think that's an important point. So you didn't niche, and then you kind of niched on doctors, lawyers, and home services. We always end up focusing on this because I think this is where agencies get stuck, is the kind of the what and the how of this. So can you talk a bit about those first few months and kind of how you guys have, decided to approach that problem of niching?
Absolutely. So yeah, doctors, lawyers, home services contractors. And by the way, home services contractors are like HVAC technicians, roofers, the people that come into your house and do something.
Yeah.
Even though they have different trades, they're all very similar as far as their needs for customers and the kind of work they do and the way they communicate with customers. So at Array Digital, at that point, we just had the one agency. We were a generalist. I had a blacklist of industries I didn't want to work for. Tobacco, alcohol, I think was on there, pornography, just, like the obvious ones. We're not going to work with those people. But I then switched to this whitelist of the 3 industries. But those 3 combined is a massive amount of the United States economy, probably global too. But it's a huge swath of industry generally speaking. It's not a niche. Even each one of those individually is not really a niche. I knew that we needed to get tighter and tighter and tighter, but that was the first step. So the first step was just narrow it down. The second step was 2019 to 2020. We started thinking about maybe spinning off an agency, creating a new agency that could focus on one of those things. And the reason I did that is because I was scared of niching Array Digital, the first and only agency, the mother goose, right? The hen that lays the golden eggs, the only hen, right? I was afraid of niching that because it's just scary. It's scary to niche. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if your existing clients are going to abandon you, right? So
Sorry to cut you off. Let's pause on that for a second, because that's one of the biggest worries. Did that happen at all? How did that play out? Yeah.
I'm only aware of one client. Now, let me come back to that, because that is a huge concern. So in order to hedge against that, and I will take risks, but I'm also very prudent. So I want to think through these things before I take a risk. We had an opportunity to work with an HVAC contractor. He really wanted to work with us. He was ready to rock and roll at Array Digital, but we had another HVAC client that was literally next door to him. And we're like, we can't, like this, this doesn't make sense. We knew that we were conflicted at Array Digital. So we put him off. And then a couple of things came together. One is in the United States, we had COVID, we had PPP money coming in. We had basically new cash. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. Not a bad problem to have.
Yeah.
And then number two is I had this web developer who was pinging me on social media, and he's like, hey, I want to start my own thing, but I don't really know what to do. Can I pick your brain, Eric? And I'm a nice enough guy where I'll get on the phone with someone like that, or meet him for coffee or something, and figure out if I can help him. It turned out I saw something in the guy, and I'm like, okay, we have a couple opportunities here. And one of them is I'm thinking about starting an agency that focuses on HVAC. And this is at a Starbucks. And he literally was like, great, should I quit my job now? And I'm like, no. Yeah, hold on. Yeah. And he was super ready to rock and roll. We ended up very quickly getting an LLC. By quickly, I mean like within 24 hours. Getting an LLC, picking a name, telling the new client what we were doing. We were going to sign him with the new agency, with a new team. And then once he signed, we hired the employee, and we were off to the races. That was Rival Digital. We did it very quickly. We made some mistakes when it came to the legality and the paperwork, but that all got cleaned up at a much bigger expense later. But that formed agency number 2, which was the first niche. Coming back to your question, now that we had that, I had more confidence, especially as I saw Rival Digital, which is who I'm.
It's a great logo, by the way. I think it's like a MMA brand or something.
This is actually the old logo.
Oh, okay.
This is the new one right here. Yeah, I just love this shirt.
So. I like the old one. The new one's good too, but the old one I especially like.
Yeah. So now I had new confidence finally that we could do this niching, because I saw it was working at Rival. So about a year later, came back to Array, and we started to niche that, which was a generalist agency. We niched that on legal clients. We hadn't really even figured out which practice areas were best for us at that point. And I started to say, I want everything public facing, I want to be legal. And the only, like our website, of course, our social media, of course, the clients that we went after when it came to outbound, for sure. Anything outbound marketing, I wanted to be legal marketing. The mistake that I made, and I retracted, and where I got into trouble with the one client that was not legal, was in the email footer, I put something about legal marketing. And that got his attention, and then he dug in a little bit. And this was months after we made this change. And it was the excuse that he needed, because I guess he wasn't happy for whatever reason. And it was going to go down the toilet at some point, but that was like one of the reasons that he decided to say, well, you guys focus on lawyers now. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm out.
Yeah. And I think that's, in so much as people lose clients, that is probably the typical situation. Like, you have a happy client. Guess what? Switching agencies is not really a fun thing to do. So they're not going to switch, as long as you're going to them and saying, here's the change we're making, things for you, or you, same team, same service. There's very few people that would freak out at that.
Yeah, if they're happy with you, and like you said, if you're gonna, I probably wasn't as transparent as I should have been. But if you go to the client, especially if you go to them, you call them. Don't email. This is a phone call or a in-person meeting, and just let them know you're probably going to see some different marketing from us. It's just all new development. We're just going after this niche now, but we love working with you. If you want to stay with us, we want to stay with you. And I promise you that we will support you forever, as long as you want to stay. You
Yeah.
say things like that, and you're going to build trust.
Right. Exactly. That makes sense. So you spun off these different agencies. I guess one thing is, how did you think about the extent to which you would keep niching, right? Because if you're thinking about legal, you can just keep going. Like you're just in a jungle going further into the canopy. It's like trust and estate or, personal injury. How did you sort of think about that issue?
Trial and error, really. One of the things that I knew going into this niching experiment was that, again, most of what I say is probably not going to be a surprise to people in agency world, but going back to who are our best customers, well, it definitely was the customers that were going after, I should say the clients that were going after individual consumers, B2C companies. That was our best client versus if one of our clients was going after other businesses. Mm-hmm. Although we can help B2B clients, they just don't believe that is the way that businesses develop. They don't believe in marketing. They believe, at least not what we talked about as far as like outbound marketing and sales. They believe in traditional, old school, going out, shaking hands, getting referrals, which is a fantastic way. By the way, that's a great way, probably the best way to get sales, but that's the only thing they believe in. Whereas B2C, they'll do that, but they also leverage things like digital media to go find people that have never heard of them before.
Yeah, it's definitely a mix, I think, depending on the niche within B2B, but I don't disagree. I think, so with that, so at this point you have the multiple agencies, you have home services, lawyers. How are you sort of managing the balancing act between them and understanding these different groups of people, and how did that play out?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So in 23, we spun off agency number 3. By the way, our plan is to continue to spin off agencies or acquire and bring them in. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of niches out there. As you said, you can go deeper into the jungle. So you could even have an agency that's like one for personal injury lawyers and one for criminal defense lawyers. Those could be separate agencies.
Yeah.
Or 2 agencies that both go after personal injury lawyers. I love being my own competition. It's great.
So actually, let's put a pin in that. So with Array, are you is the plan to make sub niches within law, or is Array just going to be the law agency basically overall?
At this point, everything that's legal goes to Array Digital. Okay. And then within that, we've picked several practice areas that are best for us. Personal injury, criminal defense, immigration is sometimes good. Trust and estates, sometimes good. Yeah, that really comes down to the client and what their belief system is.
Right, but the through line is consumer. Cool. So sorry, I cut you off. You were talking about the balancing act and thinking about these different things and handling it at once, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll continue to niche out. That's my new strategy. Once we started to do this, once we had 3, I was like, well, we don't need to stop. The thing here is, okay, again, I'm actually risk averse, but I will take calculated risk. Going back to the COVID pandemic, I knew agency owners that niched in certain areas where their industry shut down. There was one particular person that comes to mind. He focused on car dealerships. Those were his clients. Car dealerships shut down. The manufacturing supply chain for car parts shut down, and it took years to recover. He literally laid off all of his employees. Now he's since come back, but that's a huge hit. So I want something that's recession proof. I want something that is generally technology proof. And I say generally because AI is coming for all of us, all industries, basically. There's a whole bunch of other factors when it comes to picking a niche, but those are the two big ones. Now, as far as managing, which is to circle back to your question, I also realize I can't personally run 3 agencies or more. I could do it for one. Even the second one, I didn't manage myself. Erik is the president. Another Erik, he's the president of Rival Digital. We have Matt at Crush Digital and at Array Digital. I replaced myself with Gary a couple of years ago. So now I have 3 presidents that work for me. They run the day-to-day. I maintain higher level, portfolio level concerns, things like legal, HR, stuff like that, bookkeeping. So that's how I organized it. And once I made that move and started to think more about the portfolio level, that's when I thought, okay, I need to refine this strategy here. And that includes creating additional agencies over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe one more point on the niching thing, and because you brought up the the risk factors and COVID and all that. In our group, when we're focusing on helping agencies with outreach and new business, and the niching question comes into that because you have to decide on the niche before you can build all these campaigns and do all this great marketing stuff. So one thing we hear a lot of is we need to diversify because we could have another COVID, or like we had recently, interest rates could go crazy and tech gets hurt. So we're going to work with a few different verticals. The issue with that approach is you're sort of taking on this unseen risk by not building a strong agency that can like target a certain market. That said, like for that agency that's dealing with that, what do you say to that issue, and how do you think about diversifying?
I understand the rationale. I think it's an excuse. I think it goes back to what I was saying, which is that it's just scary to niche and it takes a lot of effort. And also it requires a well thought out strategy, which I don't think most people have when it comes to their business development. I think they're kind of winging it. And also it takes them out of their comfort area, their comfort zone, right? So if you're used to going out to networking events and getting clients, well, you're wasting your time if you niche on, I don't know, pick something niche, right? Personal injury lawyers. If you want to continue to go to a general networking event and hope that you bump into a personal injury lawyer or someone that works at a personal injury law firm, you're probably wasting your time. You need to be going to conferences for personal injury lawyers. You need to have a podcast for personal injury lawyers. So it requires a lot of work and strategy, which I think most people are not willing to do. So I understand the rationale, but I do think it's a little bit of an excuse, if not a lot of an excuse. The reality is that when you niche, you are saying no to the random opportunities that may have come to you or may not. Now, we still get random opportunities that come to us. If you go to any of our websites, it very clearly says who our ideal clients are. We still get opportunities from non-ideal clients. And at that point, I can choose if I want to engage with them or not.
Yes.
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. So we have non-niche clients in our niche agencies, but it's our choice. Outward bound, it's all niche marketing and niche sales. So I think in reality, people are just scared to do it, and they're coming up with a rationalization.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's go into biz dev a little bit. Can you talk about that? Like, what's been your experience with building these kind of biz dev systems within the agency? Like, what have you seen work and not work? What are things that you see people doing that you feel like are a waste of time in the agency space?
So internally, we definitely believe in hand-to-hand combat, meaning it's going to be hard work, in quotes, if you're listening. It's going to be hard work in order to get the attention of a prospect. Now, if you go to Reddit, basically every subreddit that has to do with agencies, you're going to see someone post once an hour saying they can't get clients. And when they reveal what they do, it's things like, I set up a funnel, I'm doing cold email, and I'm stuck. What should I try? And my response is always the same. Number one, cold email is a nice way of saying spam. Don't spam. If I spam, if I receive spam, I'm going to mark it as spam, block it. Now, I think there's a difference between cold email and warm email, meaning like the person knows that I exist, or maybe they should know because I contacted them some other way. So I'm not a big believer, obviously, in cold email. The funnels, if they work for you, fantastic. But I think a lot of us are numb to this these days. The funnels, you're on a landing page, you're in a sales funnel, and unless you really want that thing, you're probably not going to actually personal experience. I'm probably not going to fill out that form, especially if there's no other way to get more information on that web page. I'm going to go to to the home page, whether it's linked or not. I'm going to look at reviews. I'm going to do my research first on this firm before I decide to even give them my name and email address. So if you are an agency that is just hoping to pluck someone out of the Google funnel, the sales funnel at the very last minute, you're going to pay top dollar and you're not going to get great results, in my opinion and my experience. We've tried this multiple times. So I definitely believe in hand-to-hand combat. Someone in my agency calls it belly-to-belly selling. And where you're having to go do meaningful outbound, meaning things like showing up at conferences, being a real person, traveling, going to those networking events. The more niche, the better. If you're going to do sales, outbound cold calling, well, I think that's a lot better, first of all, than email, personally, right? Everyone's got their own opinion. A phone call takes effort. When I get a piece of spam, like I said, I mark it as spam, block it. And I don't care how often that person emails me. I can ignore it because I know they're never going to call. They're never going to actually take the effort to get in front of me. So if you're going to do that kind of outbound, I would definitely focus on getting in front of people, talking to people, starting a podcast where they get to know you, give them some value, phone calls. Snail mail is another one. I think snail mail is great.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it's what I'm sort of seeing is that all of these things, a lot of things are becoming noise, and the line between inbound and outbound is becoming very blurry, right? Because of us having so much noise that we don't even remember what we signed up for to begin with.
That's right.
Yeah, a lot of what we're helping people with is that warmer side of outbound, and like kind of just adding fuel to what the agency is already doing anyway. So like if the agency's going to a conference, it's like, well, could you be setting up meetings before, during, and after that conference through outreach, right? Or contacting people that might ostensibly be at that, thinking about that conference, even if they're not going. So a lot of this stuff, I think, goes back to the niching conversation. It all becomes easier, with that level of niching. To spend a little more time on biz dev. So you've effectively like gotten yourself out of running these agencies and gotten yourself out of the sales seat. Like, what did it take? Like, what were those building blocks that had to be in place for you to, let's just focus on sales to begin with and not everything in the world?
Sure. So first and foremost, I had to make it clear who was in charge of sales, and that just providing that level of clarity is not easy. It takes time and effort to think through what the roles and responsibilities are of different people in your company. And it's easy to think about individuals and what their capabilities are, like Dan, right? Just to use you as an example. You probably have, 5 different like strong capabilities. I'm sure selling is one of them. I could create a job around those 5 things and hope that you could pull them off and call you whatever I wanted to call you. Vice president of business development, just as an example.
Yeah.
But the reality is you shouldn't be doing 4 of those 5 things if they're not sales related. So the tighter you can get your role, the better. And then you're effectively removing excuses that the person has too much to do. They don't have time. You're like, your job is sales, 100%. Now, I may come in from time to time and assist. If you need me, let me know. But when that form comes through, when the deal gets signed, when they have questions, it's going to you. And not only that, I have expectations. You're going to get a base salary, you're going to get commission, but all of that goes away if you don't do what I need you to do. And in sales, it's incredibly easy to measure if they're getting results or not, which is signed contracts, money coming in, and a quota.
Right. I think that makes sense, and I agree with all of that. One issue that we see agencies run into, and I've made this mistake myself through the years, is hiring a driver before you have a car, right? So it's like the owner's doing everything. It's mostly inbound referrals and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You go hire some person that interviews well, they've done well in some other organization, you pay them 6 figures, you're 12 months in, they haven't closed out anything, finger pointing match, it's your fault, it's my fault, etc. And the reality is, like, maybe that salesperson sucked and they would have failed no matter what, or maybe they're floundering because they're used to having a system for helping them, like whether it's marketing firepower, outbound, or whatever it is. So I'm curious, like, how, assuming you see that as a problem, how have you sort of addressed that, and what structures in place to support those salespeople, if any? Yeah.
Yeah, I've made that mistake. I think it's a huge problem. So when we started Rival Digital, the first, I guess it'd be the second hire. The first, we hired the president to get the thing up and running and service the first client. And then we wanted to add fuel to the fire. So we hired a salesperson, and he said all the right things. First of all, everybody knew him in the community. Everybody loved him. And he said, Eric, I'm a hunter. I'm going to go out there and hunt and slay for you. I'm going to bring back the meat. I'm like, oh, man, I want to sink my teeth into that meat. Yeah, I'm in. So we hired him, and it didn't materialize. And what did we do? Well, we gave him another chance and another chance, and probably way too many chances. And so we started to measure the input that he was making, because the output was money coming in from his deals. That wasn't there. So we started to measure the input as far as like how many cold calls did he make in a day. And we gave him some very low threshold. It was something like 20 or 10 or something like that. And he was just taking the easy route. And so, meaning he was sending like cold DMs to people. It wasn't effective. And so at some point we just had to rip off the Band-Aid and say, it's not working out. We tried. We gave you a lot of warnings. So lessons learned. One, know exactly what kind of a salesperson you want. Do you want a networker where eventually it's going to turn into sales? And by eventually, I mean, it could take years, certainly many, many months at a minimum, to go out there, establish yourself as a trusted person, a referral source. You're doing all sorts of stuff for these potential clients for free, not giving away work, but like connecting them with other people.
Yeah.
Getting deep into the business world. And then maybe work will come or opportunities will come to them, and then maybe they could close it. Do you want someone like that? Or do you actually want a hunter? Right? Someone that is on day one going to come up with their own list, not ask you to go buy a list. They know how to get a list of prospects. And then they're going to just start going after these people, which is what everybody wants. Of course, everybody wants, or most people want the latter. They want a hunter. They're hoping that they can hire someone that is just amazing, a unicorn, and the person will just crush it. It's incredibly rare. It's, you also go into these things hiring a salesperson, not really thinking about the downside. Well, okay, like how do I measure if they're effective? Should I be measuring output or input? And most people are like, well, if they don't make sales, then they're a failure. That's true, but in the beginning, you probably want to measure input sooner rather than later. It's expected you're going to make not 10, not 20 cold calls, no, like 50, 100 cold calls a day. Like that's their only job. I expect you to go to 3 networking events, a week, right? Like write out exactly what you expect, and then have them report what they did against those KPIs, key performance indicators. You have to make sure they're going to do the work, because even if they do the work, the output will take a while. So I would measure the input early with the salesperson, certainly for several weeks or months. Once they start getting the results, then you can measure that. And you should have a plan, a blended approach. What is it we expect over time? What's your quota? And be very clear, not only with the person you're about to hire, but with yourself. At what point does this become a problem if they're missing quota? Number one, what is the quota? How exactly define it? And then number two, like, what are the disciplinary actions you're going to take based on what results?
Right. That makes sense. I think what we tend to find is that the agency doesn't really have numbers established until they can get enough data by getting leads and so on. Otherwise, it's like you read some article on HubSpot that's like, we should be having these numbers, but it's like going to the doctor and saying like, yeah, you should be running like a professional marathon runner. It's like, no, you have to get your base rate, and then figure out, and then expect that person to probably underperform the base rate because you're the owner.
That's right.
Go from there, right?
Yeah, actually, can I touch on that? So yeah, that's what we did. We knew that our base rate for each of us individually was 5,000 new MRR every month. And so when we hired a salesperson, that was their expectation as well. It's still the expectation, but we've had several salespeople that couldn't do it. And it's like, well, going into it as an agency owner, you're thinking, well, I'm not a professional salesperson. I don't even do this full time. I only do this for 20% of my job, and I've got all these other things I got to do. If I could do it, they should be able to do it. Which is, yeah, that's true. That's not a bad expectation, but it's not reality.
Yeah.
For most salespeople, it's going to take them a long time to get up to your level. Like, you are actually probably a pretty good salesperson because you understand the product service. Maybe you don't understand how to communicate it. Maybe you don't even understand the value proposition, but you understand what it is that you're doing. And so you can communicate that with conviction, whereas a salesperson who doesn't have that hands-on experience, it's going to take them a while.
Yeah. I think this is an important question. I think some people might be listening and they're like, Erik's going after, lawyers, home service guys driving around in a truck all day or whatever. They're bouncing around a store, so some others. And he's a very large market. There's like thousands and thousands of people in this market. I'm going after growth stage CPG firms, and there's 10,000 of them. Or I'm going after funded health tech companies. Should I be looking for a salesperson that fits my industry, or is there this platonic ideal of a salesperson and it doesn't really matter?
So I think to kind of summarize the question, make sure I'm on the right path here. Should you hire a salesperson with experience in your niche, or can you?
With experience for sure? Not, but even if it's not experienced, just somebody that can like run the playbook for that niche better than others, or has the temperament for that niche, or so on and so on.
Yeah, I think it's ideal for a salesperson that you hire to have experience in the niche, or to have something relevant where you can say, well, based on that, yes, they can run my playbook. Or maybe I'm open to modifying my playbook. I think you should always be open to it, at least listen if they have an idea. So just as an example, if they're used to using some CRM like High Level, but you use HubSpot. Okay, they could probably figure out HubSpot. Is that really a requirement? No, it's not. But should they know how to work? Like, let's say you're talking about early stage CPG companies. They have corporate, I assume they have some sort of corporate background, some sort of maybe manufacturing, big sales background in that industry. And those clients you're going after do as well. You should probably have someone that is used to talking to those kinds of people versus the person who's been selling roofs for the last 20 years, right? So you want to make sure that there's at least compatibility when it comes to the types of clients that you're going after and the tools. So let's use the roofer example. Would I hire a roofing salesperson with no CRM experience to be a salesperson at Array Digital? Probably not. They're used to dealing with homeowners. They're not used to dealing with technology. We are used to dealing with technology. We're at Array. We're talking to very educated, successful business people, white collar, totally different market. So it would be incompatible. So I think you at least at a minimum need to have some compatibility in skill set, technology, the soft skills of talking to the people, to the prospects. Yeah, I think those things are very important.
Cool. That makes sense. To kind of segue into the obligatory, AI conversation,
Sure.
one thing that I've sort of picked up on is that the sales process when I first started, my company previously when I was in the agency space has changed a lot. It sounds like you're making cold calling work really well. I think that the dialing for dollars thing has definitely like declined. It's become sales seems like it's become a much more technical kind of role. Like the technology keeps creeping in and there's a lot more of like working in CRMs and understanding the data and that sort of thing, at least from my experience from the clients we're working with. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like how is the technology and the AI starting to affect how you guys are working on the sales front? Let's start there and then we can get bigger into other things too. Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, it's not that we do a lot of cold calling. We actually don't do a ton of it now. We used to. It can work, but it's not the most effective form of outreach. One of the things that we found to be very effective is provide some value. So each of our agencies has a niche podcast where we interview, thought leaders in that niche. So we're doing more like cold invitations to be on the podcast. We're giving someone a platform to provide their message to the world, and then they have content now to repurpose. Content provided by us, right? Which is great for
Definitely
them.
believe in that. That's a strategy. Good.
Yeah, clearly this is what's going on right here, right? So I think that's one factor. Now, how does AI affect agency world and sales? Like when it comes to sales, how does it affect sales in particular? And we're looking at a tool right now in one of our agencies that is like a HubSpot. We use HubSpot. Mostly to just organize contacts, companies, and deals. That's, in my opinion, the big value of HubSpot. And it's free. There's a lot of other features that are not free, not even close to free. It can be very expensive. But we're looking at another tool at one of the agencies where it's like that, but there's a significant AI component to it. Just as an example, all video calls will be recorded. Phone calls can be recorded as well. And the AI can determine if the salesperson took whatever action we want them to take in that call. As an example, in that call, did the salesperson set up the next meeting? Right? I know that that's incredibly important. It's important in the phone call itself to line up the date and time of the next call versus, we'll get together sometime next week or the week after. You'll never be able to get in touch with them again. Get on their calendar immediately. Getting them to do that, different story. This AI will monitor the conversation, determine, in its opinion, if that happened or not, if they attempted it, and provide a grade, which then the sales manager or the president can look at and provide coaching back to the salesperson. Hey, why didn't you ask for a meeting? Right, as an example. And then there's a bunch of other factors. So I think that is going to have a pretty big influence on marketing. Other parts of AI, certainly data enrichment, which has been around for a while, but it's going to get better. It is better already. Meaning, like, I know, Dan, I know your name, right? I know your podcast. Yes, I could go out myself and I can go find out a bunch of information by cyber stalking all about you. But wouldn't it be cool if there was Dan in my CRM and 1,000 other people, and it just happened, right? There it is. It's all right there. And the AI and the automation would automatically ping you in these different areas, Instagram, LinkedIn, email, maybe even an outbound phone call. If it got through to you, it would connect it to me right away. All those kinds of things are either coming or they're already here. There's a lot of power there.
Yeah. It's kind of like uniting these systems together. Yeah, Clay's a big part of that for sure, and that's a whole other force of nature. As a quick sidebar on the booking a call from a call thing, because I what I've seen a lot of agencies do, what I've done before is like you wait till the end of that, and then you're like scrambling, say, hey, can we get the next one going, versus setting an agenda at the top of the call. Like, here's what's going to happen at the end of this call. You're going to leave with more questions than answers, so we schedule a follow-up one. And by the way, if we're at the end of this call and you don't think this is a fit, that's totally fine. Let us know. Does that work for you? And then you're not scrambling anymore, right? So a lot of it is kind of this inspiration.
That is awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah, I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I want to steal that.
Steal away. It's all passed down since the beginning of time when cavemen used to sell rocks to each other.
I really like that. And I think setting the expectation and stating that expectation and then restating it is incredibly important. So like you just said, Dan, this is the plan for this meeting. And at the end, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z and ask you for this. I also like to provide an overview to the client. Hey, we've been around for a few years. We have a sales process. We can go as fast as you like or as slow as you like. But generally speaking, we're going to have this kind of meeting, a 15-minute consultation to see if we're even a fit. Then we're going to have the actual consultation where I find out more about you and details and what you're doing, what's worked, what hasn't. And then I want to go create a proposal, and then we'll provide it to you and I'll walk you through it. Again, I can do this all right now if you want, but generally it's multiple meetings. Sound good?
Yeah.
Great. Now they know that you have a process, and that's important not only in sales, but in operations. Because if a client, especially a capable client, feels like you don't have a process, they're either going to reject you or they're going to take over and they're going to start telling you what the processes that they want you to follow, which you don't want in sales or in operations. Let them know what your process is. 99 times out of 100, they're going to yield to your expertise.
Yeah, and I think the way that you have to think is kind of like you're playing odds. You're playing blackjack a little bit, where it's like, are there situations where if you broke your process, you would win the deal? Yeah, maybe, right? But you're going to have a bad time during it, and in the grand scheme of things, you're going to lose a lot more than you would win, right? So that's the way to think about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's another thing too, is you have to be a little bit flexible when it makes sense. Well, you don't want us to be super flexible on every single deal because you'll waste your time, you'll waste their time. But I mean, certainly for big deals, we've done whatever it took to try to get it if we wanted that deal. We've flown out to places. We've had 10 pre-meetings before they sign instead of the typical 3. Right. You can make that call at the time, but you should at least be like, this is the process, and then decide if you want to veer away from it for whatever.
Yeah. And I think the devil in the details is, what is the reason that they're breaking your process? Is it because they don't respect you and your work and your time, or is there some extenuating circumstance about their system that you need to deal with, So that's a big thing. So Erik, getting towards the end of our time, you go on a lot of podcasts. I think you get asked a lot of questions. Is there anything you wish you were asked more that I didn't ask you?
That's a good question. I wish people would ask that more often. We touched on AI a little bit. I think it's worthy to touch on it just a little more. So we touched on it about sales, but how is it going to affect our industry? And there's a lot of different ways you could look at this. And I've been trying to look at this as many different ways as possible. On the one hand, it's certainly a huge threat. Just as a very quick story, we do a ton of writing where we will come up with a strategy for the content. We'll send it off to a writing bureau. They'll write it. They'll send it back. About a month after ChatGPT came out, we got notice from that writing bureau that it wasn't like an official notice, but it was a kind of a back channel message that they had lost 50% of their clients and revenue almost overnight. So yeah, if you're in the writing business, it's tough right now. AI can do arguably a very good job of that. Maybe not perfect, not yet, but it's just a matter of when. We've known that AI can do really good things like targeting for ads for a long time. Well, now it's creeping into the creative, which we always thought we were safe from. Computers couldn't get into that. Humans are better at that. I don't know. I mean, it's getting better and better and better. And we all know it's going to get perfect at some point. So where does that leave us as agency owners? Doom and gloom, we're all screwed. It's also an opportunity, and you'll see agencies that are embracing it. Now, some I think have gone to the extreme. I joked around maybe like a year ago that we should open a new agency that's 100% AI, not a single employee in it. Everything is going to be AI. Well, we didn't do it, but that does exist now. And a lot of agencies are really, really leaning, in my opinion, a little too heavily into it. I think it's definitely a very, very good idea that we all get very comfortable with it. We start to integrate it. It could definitely save time, money. It could provide a better product once you tweak it, but it's going to take a lot of effort. But where do we go from here? So I think we've had a pretty good run over the last 20 years, 15 years, something like that in digital marketing, where we had a niche that was not the traditional marketers had a difficult time pivoting their traditional agencies into digital. Some did it successfully, others did not. But we kind of had this niche where we were like computer people, effectively. And we weren't even that great at marketing. We just knew how to like do the math when it came to running ads, as an example. Even like web development, which is probably the most creative that we mostly do, is really kind of different than digital marketing. Technically speaking, right? A lot of us clump it together. I know I do. But I think the digital in digital marketing is going to go away because it's going to be so commoditized by AI that there is no more digital marketing anymore. We're going back to old school marketing. So what I think is going to be very successful in the future are things like messaging, branding, messaging architecture. I'm a huge believer in branding. We're not even a branding agency, but I believe in branding. You have to brand yourself. You have to make sure you know who your clients are. You have to get your message tight. I can't say the same thing to marketing wise to a lawyer as I can to a roofer, which is one of the reasons we niche with two separate brands, one for law firms, one for home services. If I try to, going back to your previous question about risk reduction by having multiple industries under one agency roof, if you do that, then your message now gets watered down. So instead of saying, we work with personal injury lawyers in Texas, very targeted, or roofers in Virginia, you now have to say, we work with businesses that want to grow. It doesn't hit the mark. As marketers, we know that's terrible marketing, yet we do it all the time because we don't want a niche. So I think we need to really focus on our brands. And by branding, I don't mean your logo. I mean the actual brand. Right? What does it represent? Who do you go after? So I think branding is important. Messaging is important. I think PR is very important. I think traditional media is going to become important again. Billboards, radio, TV, streaming. We don't do any of that right now, but I think it's important. I think education of clients is very important. Yes, they could do it all themselves with AI, but which AI? Like how do you, they don't know how to build a website with AI. They don't know how to create ads with AI. That's not their business. That's our business. We could be stewards of AI and provide them the best solution. If you want an image, you go over to this AI, Midjourney, or maybe ChatGPT. But if you want content, use this other AI. And we could bring it all together for you, charge a fee on top of that, and provide it to you. Everybody makes out. So I think the landscape of digital marketing is definitely changing. And I think it's important to recognize that it's changing, position yourself, but also you could be a ray of hope for these industries that are getting destroyed by AI. Right? You can provide a low-cost way to save them by helping them compete against the destructive forces in their industry, AI and other competitors that are using AI.
Yeah. I was just nodding my head the whole time because I'm glad that we're kind of seeing the same things. One thing is, I think the line between the strategy or deciding what should be done and shouldn't be done, and the line and doing is getting really, really blurry with AI, right? Because these things can be accomplished so quickly and so easily that this whole, like, here's the strategy is going to cost us this much to actually do it sort of dynamic, like the value to that is going down. And this is a little bit of projection because this is the path we've taken, so it's a little bit of, hey, here's what we're up to, but the sort of consulting enablement model seems like it makes a lot more sense, where it's like, we could do it, or you could just take these plans and then do it with these tools, right? And either way, it's not going to cost you as much as it did 5 years ago. So if all you're living on is that your older client hasn't met somebody at a cocktail party that says, hey, by the way, there's this tool over here that'll do that, you're making the wrong moves, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you think about some of the not that big brands that are out there, they all produce a product or service, but there are mid-market $100 million, $200 million companies out there that come to mind where they don't actually produce anything besides training or consultation. You could do very well in those two areas, but it's a different business than most digital marketers are used to. We're just used to building. We want to build. But if that's not where this world is going, if they don't need human builders anymore, like, you may not want to stick with that. You may want to pivot the same way that I did, pivoting from software development to digital marketing. It wasn't working for me anymore. Even though I loved coding, I just loved it. It wasn't the right business for me. I needed more stability. So something to think about.
And I forgot where I saw this, but maybe it was on Substack or something, but it was, the argument was like, the lean startup method is kind of dying because the scarce resource is no longer product creation. It's no longer development anymore. The scarce resource is attention, and I think trust as well. I think those things are tied together, attention and trust. Yeah.
Do you mind if I do one
Yeah.
more thought? Because we touched on this a little bit, just slightly, just a second ago. But building, I see like there's a big like build in public movement. I'm going to create a startup, and I'm going to tell everybody what I'm doing, and it's very exciting. It's very exciting to start something, and I think that as entrepreneurs, we need to recognize that there is a period of life, a season, if you will, where you are an entrepreneur and you're building and you're starting something, and it's a dopamine hit. You want to keep doing that, but your business doesn't need an entrepreneur at some point. It needs an operator. And I think that's incredibly important to recognize, that your job at some point switches from being an entrepreneur to an operator, or maybe it's fuzzy for a while, but your business doesn't need you as an entrepreneur forever. So focus into building a business that is sustainable. Be an operator, be proud of it. Now, every once in a while, you'll go back to being an entrepreneur, but it'll be like, you want to sign up a new service, you want to do some market research or something like that, but you're going to be coming back to being an operator. So if you just want to be an entrepreneur, that's not a job. There's no job description called entrepreneur, right? There's no job. I have 50 people in my company. There's no one that has a job title or a role called entrepreneur, including me. Right? I'm the CEO. I'm an operator. I have responsibilities that are detailed out. So we need operators in our companies. So think about being an operator once you get this thing up and running.
Erik, that's awesome. I think we could probably do a whole other episode on that, and I hope we get a chance to. This is so much fun. More than an hour flew by. Where could people go to find out what you're up to and get in touch and all that good stuff?
I appreciate that. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I thank you for the opportunity. The best way is on Instagram. You can find me at erik.j.olson. And I have kind of a weird spelling, so let me spell it out. It's ERIK dot the letter J dot OLSON. Erik.j.olson.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. And let's do it again.
Right on.